on how I found out my sister was actually my mom. My parents were much more older than me, and I always felt more distant from them than any of my siblings. I'm 17 years old. I grew with a big family. I have 5 siblings. My sister is 30, brother 29, another brother that's 29, and both of my sisters are 24 and 22. I always realized there was a big gap between me and the rest of them. I always figured that maybe I was an accident or unplanned. Being the youngest, I was spoiled all of the time. The way they treated me is how you would expect them to treat the youngest. My older sister Hannah always took care of me the best. I always saw her as a mother figure, never knowing that she was actually my real mom. She spent most of her time with me more than my other brothers and sisters. And she often took care of me when my mom wasn't there. And my parents were much more older than me, so I always felt like there was a distance between us. I ended up finding out Hannah was my mom after both of my parents passed away. If you want to know exactly how I found out, please come back for part 2 on how I found out my sister was actually my mom. When my father passed away, it was probably the worst part of my life. I was 8 years old. I did not take it well at all. I cried for weeks and I went crazy. I threw fits at people. I know my siblings were all going through this just as bad as I was, but I made it all about me. I didn't even consider them or what they had been going through the whole time. And recently, the same thing happened to my mom. It hit me just as hard, if not harder. She'd been sick for a long time and slowly getting worse. I wasn't ready for it at all. It was after this Hannah told me the truth. She sat me down and braced me that what she was about to tell me, I would be shocked. She knew that we all were still recovering from my mother's passing, but a few weeks had passed and she felt like it was enough time to wait before actually coming out with the truth.
Imagine getting charged for a murder and being sentenced to life without parole, but you didn't commit this murder. In fact, you were wrongly framed for it. And you had not 1, not 2, but 19 alibi witnesses backing you up, including photo evidence of where you were. However, one man's statement, who was an actual suspect to this crime, but had political power over you, is what put you behind bars. A girl recently reached out to me saying that her uncle had been convicted for a murder that he did not commit. I asked to know more about his case, and both his girlfriend and also 3 Georgetown students who have been working extensively on his case sent me so many documents backing up this man's innocence. This is the Melvin Ortiz case. On December 23rd of 1997, 2 masked gunmen entered Effie's Pizza Villa, which is located in Reading, Pennsylvania. The owner, George Clauser, was cleaning as they walked in. The 2 assailants told everybody to get down, and George was shot in the back. He was then directed by one of the gunmen to open up the cash register, but he obviously couldn't after being shot, so the gunman fled the scene and George was soon pronounced dead. Part 2 to the Melvin Ortiz case. So a similar robbery had occurred at this same pizza villa 2 weeks prior. The police had absolutely no leads, but they were hoping an eyewitness would point them in the right direction. The police came to this crime scene and stayed for maybe an hour, and they found no physical evidence, no fingerprints, but a bullet casing was found hours later by an employee while cleaning, which is sloppy work on their part. They had no leads, nothing, but one of the police officers had a close relationship with the victim, so he was desperate to find someone. A $10,000 reward was released, and that's when people started calling. All legitimate leads were tossed away, except for one man's, John Caltagirone. He was the son of a former Pennsylvania state representative who had an extensive criminal record history, but never really got in trouble due to the Caltagirone's political power. Even though he barely knew Melvin, he said that Melvin had confessed to him. So where was Melvin during the murder? Well, George was murdered at 7:30 p.m., but from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m., Melvin was at a toddler's birthday party, 20 minutes away from the crime scene. Part 3 to the Melvin Ortiz case. So during the time the crime was committed, Melvin was at a birthday party for a toddler 20 minutes away with 19 alibi witnesses there, along with actual photos to prove it. Melvin was 17 years old. He had recently signed up for a program at Job Corps in Pennsylvania to be taught different trades and skills so that he could be certified and get a job. He wanted to get his life on track and make his parents proud. But he came back that December in 1997 to spend Christmas with his family, and he says it's one of his biggest regrets. A day after being set up, he decided that he was going to just turn himself in. He was very confident because he had such a solid alibi. He thought it was a misunderstanding, it would all get sorted out. But after going in that day to prove his innocence, he hasn't come out since. And he has been in prison for 23 years. The second gunman was never sought after, found, or convicted. So what happened during the trial? Well, Detective Grau was the lead detective who had a reputation for playing dirty, and he ended up coercing 2 witnesses to come forward. The first person he threatened was Tina and told her if she didn't come forward, he would put her in the foster care system. Part 4 to the Melvin Ortiz case, the trial. So a little backstory on Tina, she was actually dating John Caltagirone. She was 15 at the time, he was her older boyfriend. At trial, she stated that she overheard Melvin confess to John. The other girl that was threatened by the detective was named Cynthia Jacks. The detective had threatened to take her kid away. And the third witness was a 30-year-old jailhouse snitch with a record of providing false accounts to the police. Only 4 of the alibi witnesses were allowed to testify. The other 15 were just acquaintances and had no reason to lie for him. And they had already told police that Melvin was at the party. But in the end, he was declared guilty. Well, in 2018, Tina took back her whole testimony. Not only did she take back her statement, but she also implicated herself in the crime. The night of the murder, John drove her to her house whenever he was supposed to be at work. And they lived a block from Effie's. He made her pick up a bag behind her couch that contained a hoodie, a mask, and a gun, and then told her to throw this bag into the river. Tina was 15 and pregnant at the time. John had pressured her to say that it was Melvin. Part 5 to the Melvin Ortiz case. So what about Cynthia Jacks? Well, John had promised her $10,000 to run away to Mexico and said to her that he had made up Melvin's involvement. She was murdered about 20 years ago, so it's her word against John's at this point. But I also want to point out that at the trial, John's criminal history was never brought up. Pretty much all of his charges were dismissed due to his father's political clout, not to mention that his father was buddy-buddies with several of the judges on Melvin's case. To add this additional part, on September 23rd of 1997, 3 months before the Effie's incident, a man called the police saying that there were 3 masked men outside of a brown Ford Bronco registered to John Caltagirone. And this vehicle was not stolen. Not to mention, John's own niece is on TikTok. She also states that Melvin needs to be free, and that both her grandfather and her uncle need to be held accountable. I also forgot to bring up that the one eyewitness that was at Effie's that night during the murder testified stating that Melvin was not either of the gunmen. So, who was the other gunman that night? Part 6 to the Melvin Ortiz case. So the second gunman had never been found, and after the trial, a man named Gary went to the Ortiz home, and he came forward with information about his brother. Jesus Colon Lopez had confessed to him that he had killed George. He also went by Junior. He had meant to tell the police that so Melvin would be set free, but after an 11-hour standoff with the police, he took his own life before he could do that. And the only other person that knows information about this is Junior's sister, and she refuses to speak. And the Ford Bronco that was reported in the last part was outside of Junior's house. Tina taking back her statement was denied as evidence. She believes that this is still due to the power of John's father. Melvin has tried to petition for post-conviction collateral relief 6 times. Every time he has been denied. The Free Melvin Ortiz team is tagged below. His website along with his petition is on my link tree. You can also go check out my Instagram. I'm going to have a lot more information on there as well. And I will have a YouTube together for you guys soon. Not only has the justice system deprived a family of knowing who their true killer was every time he has been denied, but they wrongfully put a man behind bars in the process.